Well, here we are. This is our first workshop in this series of the local action workshops. There's going to be 3 in this series, so we welcome you here tonight. And I'm Allison Gardner. I work with Democracy Maine as the director of Maine Students Vote. We partner really closely with the League of Women Voters and are very excited to be here tonight with all of you and our panelists. A quick preview of who our speakers are going to be tonight. We have a wonderful group of folks here. We have Pia Holmes, who is an Augusta School Board at-large member. Safia Khalid, who's a former Lewiston City Council member. Rachel Noble, who's a select person in Trenton. Victoria Pelletier, who's a Portland City Councilor for District 2. And Brandon Reed, who's a former candidate for the RSU 9 school board race in Farmington. Before we dive into our panel though, I'm gonna share some quick facts about running for office. So, we're gonna look at some requirements. The first requirement is you need to be 18 years old to run for office. This applies for your county commissioner, your county treasurer, district attorney, judge probate, register of deeds, school board, and sheriff. All of those offices have the age minimum of 18, though the district attorney and the judge probate both do require that you are in good standing with the Maine bar. And the sheriff has a few more requirements of being previously being a law enforcement officer, meeting the basic standards of law enforcement training, never having committed a Class C crime, and submitting to the Secretary of State's office for a background check. The other 2 common requirements for running for office is that you be a resident and a registered voter of that community, and that you collect a qualifying number of signatures to be a candidate. So that question of when are you a candidate? You're officially a candidate when you've collected those qualifying number of signatures that we'll talk about, and we'll talk more about the signatures in a minute. And then most elected offices are nonpartisan. That means there's no Republican or Democrat next to your name on the ballot, but there are a few that do run on your party status or as an independent and unenrolled. So when you file your petition, you're also declaring your party status for those races that it is pertinent for. You're also a candidate as soon as you start fundraising with the intention of qualifying as a candidate. And then when you can also file a declaration with your local office as to be a write-in candidate. So a little bit more about the signature requirement. Here are the numbers in a breakout that's by position. While this may vary depending on your local elections office's requirements, these numbers are our general guideline, and they tend to hold pretty true for county level races. A few counties have elected positions that are specific to your area. Some of these positions could be like a budget commission. They're really great ways to get involved, but aren't widely publicized because they're a position that's specific to your county. So your clerks at your town offices are really going to be your best resource to know what races are available and what positions are available. Now, city signature requirements can also be impacted by the size of the town that you live in. This chart here gives you an overview of those requirements for towns and for the population sizes that are smaller than 500. You can see here, if you live in a town with less than 200 people, the minimum signatures you need to collect are 3. So it really is scalable depending on where you live and what the town size is and what the race is. But how do you go from, like, once you've collected your required number of signatures, these need to be verified by your local clerk To count towards your total, a signature must be obtained from a resident that is currently a registered voter and lives in that community, has a valid address in that community. If your signatures are from folks who are not currently registered, then they won't count towards your total. And this leads us into the general timeline, because your clerk's office needs time to review those signatures and make sure that they meet the minimum standard. So how much time does a candidate have to collect signatures and file their nomination papers? Nomination papers are standardly available 40 days before the filing deadline. And the filing deadline is that day when you have to have all your pieces turned in. 60 to 90 days before the election is when those nomination papers are due. And so we have this listed out here in the number of days that are required by town office to give you and them the space to have it organized, because some of our towns have elections outside of November. Some of them run summer elections for town and city offices. Some of them run spring and early winter. So I can't iterate enough that your local town and city clerk are really your best resource to know what those timelines are and what is the specific rules for your area. This is a generalized timeline for a November election that has a primary in front of it. So again, not all seats will have a party affiliation. Most seats, in fact, at the local level are nonpartisan. But by January 1st, if you want to change your party enrollment, that is your deadline to do so. January 1st is also for many races when nomination papers are available, and you can begin collecting signatures or circulating your petition. No signatures are valid if you've collected them before January 1st. You can only collect signatures within the same year that you're running for election. March 15th is the nomination paper deadline if you're enrolled in a race that has to have a primary. If you're not running in a race that has a primary in front of it and you're running unenrolled, then that deadline is pushed back to January 1st, because there's no need for you to be a part of the primary election. So you see these dates can vary on quite a few factors here, but the city and town clerk in your area will be able to pinpoint you specifically what your local dates and timelines are. So I want to end on the message here that running for office is easier than you think. You may notice that there are very few requirements for running for office. Most don't require college degrees. You just have to live in that community and be able to demonstrate some support. And now to talk a little bit more about what it's actually like to run for office, we have a great group of panelists here tonight to share with you their experiences on running for office and help us dive a little bit deeper into this topic. So I am going to pass it over to Pia Holmes, to one of our panelists tonight, to introduce herself to you all.
I'm Pia Holmes, and I am an at-large board member in the Augusta School District. I have spent my entire work life as a teacher, high school and then upper elementary, and then I was on a school board in that town, and we moved and I became a school board in Augusta. So I'm passionate about kids and education. My favorite time was in the classroom with the kids. I absolutely loved it. And I just thought I could be a big help, you know, maybe by, I think I had to do the write-in the first time I ran. So that was an experience. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for coming. I'm done, I guess.
Thanks,
And
Pia.
do you want me to pick someone?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, how about Rachel, who's next to me on the screen?
Hi, thanks. So my name is Rachel Noble, and I'm a select board member in the town of Trenton, Maine. And I have served for the past 3 years. I'm actually coming up for re-election in May. So I'm facing, facing a re-election and another candidate running against me. And it's been a very interesting experience. I've learned a lot. I actually got very interested in running predominantly when I first started because of education, because of really wanting to support my town and making some decisions that were outside the school board's jurisdiction, but I was a strong advocate for kids, and I wanted to be involved in that way. And so those are some of the ways that I got involved, but I'm happy to answer questions later, but I want to move forward. And so I'll call on Safia. I hope I said your name okay.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Sophia. I am from Lewiston area. I ran for office in 2019 and I got elected for Ward 1 in the city of Lewiston. And I did not seek re-election because I went back to school. I'm currently studying my master's degree. But yeah, during my term at the council, I really was advocating for public housing, better infrastructure, and increased funding to our public education system. Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Victoria, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Victoria Pelletier. I'm a city councilor for District 2 in Portland. I actually just got elected in November, so I've been a councilor now for 4 months. It's been an interesting experience, but I think the things that I'm most proud of are that I am the second Black woman ever to be on the Portland City Council, and I'm currently the youngest member of the City Council. And I work in racial equity and community engagement, and I'm an activist as well and a community leader here in Portland. And so I was really excited to get involved in local politics and make my voice heard as much as possible. So thank you so much for having me, and it's nice to see everybody. And I'll pass it to Brandon.
Hi guys, my name's Brandon. I'm a junior political science major at the University of Maine at Farmington. I was a former candidate for the RSU 9 school board here in Farmington. I do a lot of work with civic education and political discourse here on campus at UMF. And my reason for running was that I'd actually taken a course and it was a political practicum course. So I got my first position kind of working on a campaign, working for local level race. It was actually a county commissioner race here in Farmington. And I had a lot of fun. And I saw that there was a school board seat opening up, and I was like, well, who better to, serve students than a student myself? And so I took a chance, and though I didn't win, it was a very rewarding experience. And I definitely do it again.
I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you all. I think we have some really great voices from all across the state who run for a variety of different positions and have had a variety of experiences in those races. And I'm going to kick us off with our first question here, which is, what was the hardest part of beginning your bid for local office? And I think I will head back over to Pia.
I have a glass, honey. Thank you. Sorry, was that a little coughing spell there. Nice husband. Okay, so the hardest part about beginning my bid for local office was the thought of collecting all the signatures. As a at-large position, I had to get 100 signatures, and I was relatively new to the community. So I had to get over the daunting part, and I did. I actually began to have fun doing it. We had little cards made, and as I was, trying to get signatures that introduced me and I could leave with someone, I would stop people on the sidewalks who were walking or running. And I would always ask, are you a registered Augusta voter? And it was really nice. I had a good time. So that the first time I ran, I was a write-in. So that was interesting. So I didn't have to get signatures because that was my first time, but we did get signs, and I'll save that for the next thing because that was one of the surprising things. But I think this last time, so was my third. The first time I ran, it was to finish somebody else's term. The second time I ran was fine. That was great. But the third time, I think the hardest part this time, that's another point, is it was a little more divisive in the neighborhood. So that was I had to figure out how to navigate that. So yeah, but one of the things that helped was school board is nonpartisan. That was the way I approached people, but they wanted to vent, and that's okay. And I thank them for their input. My husband is sneezing too. We can't win tonight. Sorry. Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. Rachel, do you wanna step in next?
Sure. So let's see. I can say this is the third time I'm running. The first time I ran, I didn't win. But I will say it's been a really good experience in doing it, and I learned a lot along the way. And one of the things I will share, I don't know if it's the hardest thing, but I think the most important thing is collecting a trusted kitchen cabinet. And so, because for me, those who know me may not know, but I love to talk to people, but I'm quite shy, and I don't like, as Pia was saying, I did not want to go and knock on people's doors and talk to people and gather signatures. It's not something I really enjoy doing. So that was really hard, but having that cabinet of people, and for me, the kitchen cabinet is just those trusted individuals. So you can ask a question, they can research something, they'll show up for you. And that was really important. And they were the ones who really helped me and have continued to help me each time I've run and made it more and more successful. And even as I have served, because they would show up and say, well, I'm going to be at your house at 9 o'clock and then we're going to knock on doors. And I was like, okay, if you're showing up and I'm taking your time, I can knock on the door. And I will say something that echoes what Pia said. When I got to the door and I knocked on the door and I was having conversations with people, I really have always enjoyed it, even in the divisive conversations. And I think I started running, and I made the decision to start to get engaged in 2016, specifically because of the politics at the national level, but wanting to make an impact locally. And things haven't gotten less divisive, they've gotten more. But I will say, even on the divisive conversations, people have appreciated when you take the time to knock on their door, and that you take the time to talk to them in person and listen to what they have to say. And I will say that overall, that has been, while it's the thing I've dreaded the most and continue to, it's also been the thing that I've learned the most from. I've really, really enjoyed, and it reminds you of why you want to serve. So with that, I'm happy to pass it to you, Allison, or I can pass it to the next person if you want me to call a name.
Yeah, go ahead and pass it to.
I'll say it. Sophia. I hope I got it right this time.
Thank you. It's Sophia.
Sophia.
Yeah. So, okay, what's the hardest part? So the hardest part for me was even thinking if I was qualified. I was like, there's no way that a young person with all these identities can ever run for office. I was like, this is not for me. I'm I'm not a lawyer. That was the first thing I said. Because I just thought that you have to have like, you know, a law degree, or you have to went to college for years. And that really speaks to how sometimes excluding politics is and campaigns, that we don't think it's for everyone. We just think it's for a certain demographic of people. So that was the first something that I struggled with. But then after just talking to people saying, oh, you can do it, those like encouragements really helped. But the other thing was, I personally was dealing with a lot of social media attacks, unfortunately. And that was very, you know, very disheartening. But what really got me every day going back were just talking to my neighbors and the voters who really mattered. So yeah, there were several things, but honestly, door knocking was the best part of my campaign. I'll pass it to Victoria.
Thank you. I think the hardest part for me was probably canvassing. I actually didn't like it at all. I feel like I'm not a shy person, but people were really mean. Portland politics are very intense. And so yeah, it would either be like a really great day canvassing or like a terrible day canvassing. And I never knew what I was walking into. So I'd always have to go in with like, okay, I'm calm today, everything's gonna be fine. And it would either be good or bad. And a lot of it too was rooted in racism and sexism and ageism. And so that was really challenging as well. And it helped bringing a group, and it helped always doing something like really fun after canvassing. So I could just like boost myself back up. But yeah, especially here in Portland, the politics are intense, and people will say whatever they want to say when they have a stranger on their doorstep talking about running. So that part was challenging. And I think the other part actually was the lawn signs, because my opponent's lawn sign game was like really strong. So like I would put up a couple, and then I would drive past it a couple hours later and there'd be like 3 more of his. It's like I put up one and like 3 of his would sprout up. And so that was always really hard, because I always felt like I was trying to catch up, and I was like, his signs are everywhere. Oh my gosh. And like, it didn't end up mattering as much as I thought it did. But that was hard. I felt like I was always kind of trying to out sign him, and it just wasn't working for me in that regard. So those are probably the 2 hardest parts for me. So yeah, and I'll pass it to Brandon.
So my hardest part was very similar to a lot of what people have already talked about. I was 19 at the time, college student, not even from Farmington. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I'd only been in the area for about 2 years. So obviously there was a lot of pushback at that. Some people are not always too keen about someone that young, someone that, you know, inexperienced running for a position. So that was a little bit of a struggle. And then also just getting my name out there, because obviously, because I was so young, I hadn't run anything before, you know, nobody had any idea who I was. But that's why I decided to really make knocking on doors kind of a big deal, at least for when I was gathering signatures. You know, because I could have easily gone around campus and gotten the 25 signatures that I needed, but I was like, okay, you know, if I do that, I'm probably not putting myself up for success. So, you know, even though, like many of other people have said, I wasn't the most keen, especially with COVID and, you know, social issues as well. I was like, I don't really want to knock on strangers' doors, especially because this was in the middle of winter and it was freezing. But I was like, you know what, I got to do this. And it was a really, really great experience getting to hear from people, hear you know, their support, and hear, you know, the issues they wanted to bring up with me. So it was definitely a great experience.
I appreciate you all leaning into starting off with that reflection of like, what was the hardest way to begin. I think it's sometimes that making the decision to start something is a struggle for a lot of people, and it's good to know some of the anticipated things that people could run into down the road as they're working on their campaigns or starting to organize. And along the similar lines of that question, I'm curious, what is one thing that you would have done differently, kind of like looking back at what you organized with the eyes of the experience you now have? What's something you would have done differently? And I'm gonna flip our order in reverse and start with Brandon this time.
So I think I would have actually tried to do some more in-person things. I tried to kind of stray away from doing like any in-person events just because at that time COVID was really kind of not doing great things. And so I kind of stuck to social media to interact with a lot of people, and just put a lot of things through there to try to get my name out there and interact with people in the community. But reflecting back, I think that it probably would have been beneficial, especially with how close the margin was. It was only 5 votes that I lost by. So maybe having, one in-person event or something, that was, carefully done, could have been beneficial. Oh, I will popcorn. Are we just going in reverse order or?
Whichever way.
Oh, okay, I'll jump to Pia then.
I know what I would do differently. Okay. I would be better prepared for the phone call from the newspaper, which I should have expected. And I would make sure that I had the major points that I would be strong on as my platform and not get turned around. We have inexperienced reporter, but I also could have done better. I could have been a more savvy politician. So I was not happy with the way it came out. So I have learned from that. Also, I think I would have taken some of my platform would have been developed based on some of the current board goals that are in existence, and it might be for a different job. It might be what the select people, that decide, or the town goals. Yes, I would be more organized and ready for the call. Thank you. And let's see, let's see, who's next to me? Rachel?
Okay. I've been racking my brains on this. I have to say I feel really lucky in all the races. Now I'm in my 3rd one that I've run. And I think what I will say is the most important thing that I've learned is to ask for help, when you need it. And I think that runs true if you are deciding to run and looking for guidance. But also if you are in a position, I can say for sure that when I needed help, it was the most important thing I could do was to ask for it and to call those trusted individuals and say, look, I'm not exactly sure of what I'm facing right now, or I'm struggling with this. I need an ear to bounce some ideas off. And so I would recommend anybody who's considering running, who's considering holding office, to find those trusted people, both within their own close-knit group, but they'll also meet them in the community. Because I think when you're out in the community, and you are, like anybody here has said, you're there for a reason. You're there because there's important things that you're going to represent the community on. And you'll find those other voices who know a lot. And so when you reach out to them and make that connection, and they become a resource too, and calling on those resources is so important. And I think maybe even just reminding myself to call on them earlier is important, and I laugh because there's people on this call that I know I've called out to. And I think that has been really transformative. So I would encourage anyone thinking about running for office to know that it's okay to do that, to reach out to those people for advice, for support, even just to uplift you after a bad day, because bad days do happen. People will vent at you. People will say mean things in public and on social media. So have those people you can turn to be the balm of making things better. And let's see, and I'll change it up. I think I'll call on Victoria.
Thank
Oh, wait, did you already go? Oh, wait,
Nope,
I didn't get confused. Okay, good.
I don't know what I would do differently. I was thinking about this one. I mean, other than probably getting like way more palm cards than I think I need, because I never got enough. And I would always be scrambling and like having an anxiety attack, calling the printer and being like, I need 500 more by tomorrow. Is it possible? And they were always so great, by the way, but it was always like, I never got enough. I just always thought I would have enough, and they go so quick when you're canvassing, and when you're canvassing with a group and you give stacks to people, they run out quick. So that would be actually be my advice, is to get more, way more than you think you need. But I think other than that, I mean, I campaigned for 5 months, you know, it was like a all out, just, it was all out blur. And I feel like because I ran against somebody who had already been a city councilor and was a former state rep and was 30 years older than me and had already done this before, like, I don't know that I would have done anything differently, because I think because I went in as just like, I'm just a regular person that like wants to be a counselor, I'm an activist that wants to be a counselor, I think that actually helped a lot, because I didn't really go in knowing what I was doing. Like, I was just totally new, and I still, like, every day is a learning experience. But yeah, I don't know that I would do anything differently other than like be more prepared with the supplies that I need, because I think that really served me well in my race as just a brand new person that's never been in politics and like the unexperienced person. So I don't know actually that I would change it, you know, now, but I don't know. Talk to me in like 2 years and we'll see. And I'll be like, oh no, I would have probably changed a lot, but for now, probably nothing. So yeah, I'll pass it to Sophia.
Thank you, Victoria. For me, one thing I would have done there, I think, I think knocking more doors, definitely, because I believe that door knocking and really is what matters. Many people focus their energy on a variety of things, from like social media engagement or events and etc. But door knocking, making that you know, one-on-one relationships, talking to real people at the doors is really, really crucial and important, especially at the polls when they like, oh, you came to my door, because you came to my door, I will vote for you. Many people said that to me. That was really surprising. So for me, I would like increase that. I think I knocked over like 2,000 doors, but if I could knock every door in Ward 1, I literally would have. So just really emphasizing that is one thing that I would do. Another thing is, you know, delegating. So there are many people who want to help you, because a lot of the time you're like, I can do this and I can do that. No, we're like all working, we have lives, many people are parents, etc. So just like if anyone who wants to help and volunteer, saying, oh, just focus on my social media and like create posters for me and etc. That was something that I would also you know, suggest for other people to do.
Thank you. I love hearing these stories about the experiences that each of you have had running for your different positions and how it's varied across the state from where you're at. And I'm really appreciating the insights that each of you are giving us tonight. I do want to invite the audience to start putting questions in the chat if there's something that you're particularly curious to know, and we will work them in to our lineup of questions. But my next question here for our panelists is, what is something that surprised you, either about the position or about the race? So what was a surprise you had? And I will pass it to Victoria.
Thanks. I think the surprise I had was actually election day, on seeing how far your hard work really went, because again, like I said, I campaigned for months and you're just like going. And then it was really not until election day when you see your results. Like, we don't have polling here in Portland, so you couldn't really tell like who was in the lead. If you're just judging by lawn signs, I was going to lose in like flying by, you know, a huge margin. But when we were poll greeting and I was saying hi to people, so many people were like, oh my gosh, yeah, Victoria, no, I'm voting for you. This is so exciting. Oh my gosh. And I was just like, that happened so often that I think I didn't realize how far my reach had gone. Just people coming out and really excited. And that felt, really good in a way that like I wasn't prepared for, because it's just kind of like you campaign so hard and then it's election day and you hope that you made an impact, but you don't know. And so I think that was really the first time that I realized that we had gone really far in terms of getting my name out there. And again, my name being a brand new name versus somebody that had been around for a very long time. So I think that was really a cool moment to have, of being like, oh my gosh, I went way further than I thought. And that was actually the first time I thought that I might win, was actually after I was doing poll greeting. And I was like, there's a lot of people that saying they're voting for me today. So that feels good. So yeah, I think that was really interesting. And I'll pass it over to Sophia.
Thank you. Sorry, what was the question?
What was something that surprised you, either about the position or the race experience of running?
Just how many people. I'm a people person. So what really surprised me and really was I loved it was how many people remembered our conversations, remembered my face, remembered my name, and really like took their time to come out and vote for me. That was just, I don't know, phenomenal to me. Like these strangers, like especially where many of them welcomed me into their homes and like we had a cup of tea and all of that. Cause I was like, they've never seen me before. They don't know who I am. I've never been like door knocked. I mean, I door knocked for candidates, but I never really like, it wasn't for me. So it was all surprising because I had these assumptions, right? And all of that were just like thrown away when I met them at the door. They were so friendly and so welcoming. So that's the one thing that surprised me. The other thing that surprised me, but it shouldn't be a surprise because I'm continuing to grow thick skin, is people can be rude and mean and horrible. So just know that. But like those who really matter though, will like come and support you and have your back, right? They may not engage in social media conversations, they may not always be there, but they have your back. So that's one thing that surprised me, just the differences of like the vocal people can be the meanest at times. And yeah, I'm learning in politics, but that's just one thing, especially for us women of color. We just have to like go through so many hoops. But yeah, I don't know who. I wonder if Brendan went.
So I would again say my experiences have been similar. I would say that what surprised me the most was the amount of support I was able to receive. These were people I'd never met before. And I mean, even at the end of kind of the voting and everything, when I found out the results, obviously I was disappointed to not only have lost, but to have lost by such a small margin. But I was just amazed that I even got that many. I mean, Farmington's a pretty small town. Like I said, I'm not from here. I'm pretty young. And so like see that I had 125 people that I probably didn't even know most of them that were willing to come out and say, we want to give you this opportunity, was a really, really great feeling. And then also on social media, like Sophia was saying, some people can be definitely very difficult. I had one individual in particular who was just really hammering it home that they did not want me running. But luckily there were people that were saying the things that I couldn't say, because there's always responses you want to give, but you have to hold yourself back kind of. But I always had people there pulling for me, and that was really great to see. So it was nice to see that there's a really great community out there that's willing to support me. So, and I will popcorn it to Rachel.
So I've been toggling back and forth in my mind between surprising and running and surprising and serving. And I think the most important or the most interesting surprise is how important it was to sometimes have a witness in the room, and how much it can really change a dynamic. And I think that when I was elected, I was coming into a board that was very well established. They'd been together they went to high school together and quite a long time ago. And so I had come in with some different ideas, and it was hard. And what I think was really amazing is it really could change the dynamic when people would just come and sit in the back of the room and listen. And I will also say it really was a big support too. And it surprised me in how valuable it was for people. And they would let me know, thank you for saying that, you know, and because I was in a position to say things that other people maybe weren't. You know, when you're in an elected position, you do have a platform, you do have a voice. And so people would say, thank you for being able to voice something. And I realized the most important thing is that it may scare me to say something, but often it could be on behalf of a whole lot of other people who didn't have the position or the microphone to say that. And that was really important. And so, like you said, I would sometimes get calls or texts after a meeting, sometimes always after a particularly hard meeting, I would get people saying, you know, I really appreciate that. And that helped. And so I just think that was surprising of what a difference it can make. You know, again, when you're talking about, you know, whether you're a woman or a woman of color or young or, you know, all these different things, you're there and you have a voice and you can be representative. And I think that that's really critical. And that's, I think, why we're here. So, and let's see. Pia, did you go on? Did you answer this question? I'm losing track. So.
Not yet, haven't answered. Okay. The first surprise I had was when I just had won the election, and I went in to talk to the superintendent, and he told me I was getting money every month. And I looked at him like he had two heads. So I never thought that, you know, this to me was a volunteer position, and within the structure in the Augusta community, there is a stipend. So I was like very surprised. So that was kind of fun. And I guess the other thing that kind of surprised me was this is my second community as a school board member. So I was learning that not all school boards are the same. And we all follow the same rules. We, you know, state rules, and we try to do the same things, but very differently. The first experience I had was a town. I lived in a town that was part of a district with 4 towns. And so we had a very large board, and, you know, and we had select people. So the whole government was different. And then moving to Augusta, we have a city, and we have city council. And so things were a bit, you know, seemed to be a bit more formal, and things were done a little bit differently, but different isn't, you know, different's good. And again, we all do the same kind of work, and the goal is the same. So, you know, I learned a lot, and to this day, there's never a time when I don't learn. So that's the way it works. So yeah. Oh, and they love my signs. I loved my signs. I've used them 3 times, and people know who it is when they see them. So I really think that's another whole topic that would be fun talking about at some point. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Who hasn't gone?
I think that's all of you for that question. We do have some really great audience questions coming in here, and one of which, Pia, you just kind of kicked us off on, which is a question from Ann Luther about how do you find time to serve, and the wondering if these positions are paid or unpaid, which varies across positions. So I'll let you all dig into that, and then the follow-up of how do you find time to balance your personal responsibilities? So this time management piece. And if you want to, I think you've answered part of that question for us. So I'm gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
The stipend part, I did get the first in the town, I think at the end of the year, we were told we got $150. And when I moved and I'm on this board, it's like 200 a month. And, you know, I don't know if other all school boards do that or not. I have no clue, but I thought it was a volunteer position. So that was nice. Yeah. And what was the other part of this?
How do you find time to balance your personal responsibilities and your public?
Well, I think it's important to first of all, to be proactive, and before you run for an office, research what the time commitment is and what's expected. I am retired, so this is you know, easier for me. I have, my children are all grown. I have grandchildren, and yeah. So, but it can be time consuming, especially during budget season when you're meeting maybe once or twice a week, and it may go 3 hours. So, you know, that's when it gets very intense. So I think it's important to kind of, you know, how often will you be meeting in your position? You need to know that so that you're more comfortable running for the office. And there are differences, you know, in every community. So, let's see. You want me to ask someone to go next, or would you like to do it?
Either way.
All right, how about, let me see. Sophia.
Oh, thank you. Is a question about stipends?
Yeah, about stipends and about the balance of your personal responsibilities versus the position responsibilities. So a two-parter.
Yeah, I think for Lewiston City Council, we were getting like 200 a month or so for all like time that I was serving on 3 committees, the housing committee, the finance committee, and the CBG committee, CDBG committee, yeah, on top of the regular city council meetings, which is like a workshop and then a regular council meetings. So there's a lot of hours, especially during the budget season. It was a lot for like, so basically it is a volunteer job. I also have like a full-time job working for a nonprofit, 40 hours. So yeah, and I love going to the gym too. So it's really hard to find time to go to the gym, and like for self-care is so important. So yeah, I don't know. It's always been tricky. And when I'm stressed, I don't eat food. So at times I wouldn't eat food because I'm so stressed about all that I gotta do. But I've learned to, like, when council meetings are done, and it's not your life 24/7. So take a break and take care of yourself and your well-being. And lastly, I think for me, like, I was really, I don't know, like my emotional and mental well-being was at times like in jeopardy because it was just a lot. So yeah, I think it's just a learning process, and you just learn. You get like thrown in and you learn, and then next time if you come back, you'll be pro at it. So that's it. But it feels good. Like I love when like someone like a constituent reaches out to me and I'm able to help them, or there's like a community issue, I'm able to be there and like advocate for them. That's really what like made my heart happy. And that's why we do all, why we run for office, to support other people who are marginalized and lower income and don't have the voices to like be at the table, right? So yeah, it's a balance. Thank you. Victoria?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything Sophia just said. It's a lot. It's a lot at all times. And I think, we have meetings twice a month. I'm also on 3 committees. I also work full-time. I have a full-time job and a part-time job to be able to afford Portland. So that's also, it's a challenge. I think it's hard to balance, the constant emails and phone calls and meetings on top of your regular work that I do, and community work. And then like having a life as well is really hard. So I'm still trying to find that balance. It's a challenge, but I agree with Sophia, when the council meetings are done, they're done. And you really have to find time, I think, to say, today's just not the day that I'm working on council stuff. And I try and do a self-care day every weekend. So whatever opposite day I don't do self-care is the day that I'll do a bunch of council stuff, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, I think it's hard. And I think we get a stipend as well. It's essentially nothing. It's like we are paid volunteers. And I think that goes back to, there's a lot of barriers that exist when you're not paying individuals a living wage to serve. And I don't think that, it should be a volunteer position. I do think that by doing that, we're cutting out a lot of students, we're cutting out a lot of young people, low income people, unhoused individuals, marginalized individuals, when we're not providing that living wage. So I'm hoping that eventually that's something that we can talk about on the council level, but it's hard, I think, to find that balance and to make sure you're taking care of your self-care and your mental health, and especially I think being under levels of scrutiny so much, it's hard. But I do go running every day. That's at least the one thing that I don't compromise on, is I'm getting a run in to get my mind right every day. And yeah, I'm getting a little bit better with it now, but it's definitely a challenge. So yeah, I'll pass it to Brandon. Are you gone yet?
So I don't know if I'm quite qualified to answer this question, because I didn't actually win. I will just kind of echo what Pia said. I think it's really important to research the position you're running for before running for it, because that will really tell you all you need to know as far as how you're going to be able to balance your time. And then with that, I will just bring it over to Rachel.
So I laugh at this question a little bit. For me, the biggest barrier to serving, and even when I was deciding if I was going to run again, was time. I agree what Victoria was saying. It's a real challenge, because I have a very demanding full-time job, and I have 3 kids, and they all need me too. And a family, and so balancing all those is the hardest thing that I do, and really struggling with having the time to come prepared to a meeting, to do the research. And one of the techniques that I use is I always come back to this, but I ask for help. This is one where I will call people up and I'll delegate and say, I do not have time to read deeply into this piece of something that I want to research. Could you research this question for me? And get it back to me by X time. And I do that with friends, family, people, I will ask people, hey, I'm struggling with this thing, and I know it's going to come up at a meeting. Can you look at it and just give me some of your feedback on what you think? And I think that really is a big help. But I will say, in terms of our country and all these things, I do think it's one thing that we need to solve is finding a way for people to be able to engage in civic engagement in all levels, because at the local level, it's really important. At the state level, I can't imagine how anybody could run if and commute to Augusta from far off places for the wages that we're paying. So I think it's something that we need to solve at a state level. And I think it's critical that we figure out how to solve it, because we do need more people able to run, qualified to run, bringing more voices to the table. And the more, again, there's more people who have even more barriers, whether due to income, color, racism, these things. And the more we open those doors, the better our country can be. But for the meantime, I think asking for help, asking those people who might have time, is really important to do, because there are people who want to help you when you are in that position. They're glad you're there. They'll happily research something to help you do your job.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing and for speaking of time, for carving out a little time to be here with us this evening and to share your kernels of wisdom and your experiences and your stories. I really appreciate all the voices that we've had in the room tonight, and I do want to respect your time and know that we're coming right up on 7 o'clock. So this is my really big thank you to each of you for being here and for sharing your work. For our participants this evening, I do want to remind folks that this is the first workshop in a series, and the next workshop around local action is creating local change. And so this is a moment to learn some skills and come hear from folks that have worked on campaigns within their local towns and cities. So thank you all for being here this evening. I cannot say that enough to each of our panelists. I know you all lead busy lives, and there's I want to acknowledge that there's a few questions that we didn't get to in the chat. So no, I'll save those and send them around to our panelists if anyone has time and or thoughts that they want to write about those, and send them out to our participants afterwards. But thank you all for being here tonight, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings, and much gratitude to everyone. Thank you.